Check, 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 check. Normal. Goodness. Good evening, everybody. Glad you could make it to tonight's live reading. Let me get everything set up and we will get rolling. All right, Mr. Man, come on. I don't know why you can't just put them exactly like how I've got them. Okay, there we go. I think that's got everything set. Alrighty. Hey, Leia. Hey, Blondie. Glad to see everybody coming on in. Let me. Okay, so let's see. What have we got for new business or anything tonight? Well, entries should have been in for the Halloween writing contest. So far, we've only got 2 entries. So we will see how that goes. Hey, Susan, glad you could make it. Doing pretty well. Last minutely decided to do something different with the Kashmir Halloween stories, so it's been busy. Speaking of that, next week you'll hear them tonight, but next week we'll kick off the Kashmir Halloween stories. Let's see. We'll have a lot of like Kashmir stuff going on. So yeah, look forward to that. That'll be for about the next 2 weeks. I was going to do individual stories, but I decided I just didn't have, enough time to do them all credit. So I have intermingled everyone's stories together so that we can get, a few Kashmir stories at once. I think it works out good. I may do it in a different format when I put it in the book, but I think it works out pretty good. Oh, yeah. Good times, good times. So tonight we're going to get the first 5 parts of our Kashmir Halloween story. And some of you have asked, yes, Earl and his dating problems are going to be resolved in this one. So don't worry if you've missed your favorite gravekeeper and his new girlfriend, then they're going to be involved in this too. So you'll get some resolve there at least. And with that, I think we might be ready to roll. Trying to think if there's anything else. It's really about it. Oh, I meant to get some pictures today. I caught a big fat possum in my possum trap. He was trying to get after my chickens, and then I cut him loose next to the woods, out back of the field. Well, thank you, Susan. Big old guy. He was very polite though. He didn't hiss or try to bite me. I just opened up the door and he kind of sauntered out. So very exciting day. And my kid brother's supposed to be here in the wee hours of the morning, so I'll have some farm help coming in. That'll be fun. I haven't seen my brother in a little while. If you need a visual representation, he is very large and very blonde, so we're kind of polar opposites on that end, but we get along very well. He's my baby brother, and I love him. But oh yeah, chickens are okay. I noticed they were super agitated all day, and I couldn't figure out why. And then I got over to the side of the cage, and it's like, oh, yeah, because there's a full possum in a possum trap. So that'd be enough to put anybody off their laying. I wondered why I wasn't getting any eggs today. Oh, yeah, my brother is very blonde. He's a blacksmith, actually. He went to college to be a blacksmith, which I did not know was a thing you could do. But he's going to set up in the barn behind the house and do his blacksmithy thing. Hey, Osiris. A buongiorno to you as well, and an extra Jean Bon Jovi to you. But yeah, so we're gonna start working on some bigger projects. My brother-in-law is supposed to send some chickens over too, so I'll soon have some more chickens, and it's just gonna be business as usual around here. But yeah, about 10 minutes in. He did live in Ohio. He's moving here though. He wants to live closer to the folks too, and as they get older, you don't know how much time you got left with anybody, so he wanted to live a little closer so he could spend more time with my parents and we could work on farm stuff together. Apparently so, yeah. I didn't know blacksmithery was something you could get a degree in, but he did. He's actually been plying his trade for a couple of years now, making pretty good money. He wants me to be his social media manager when he gets down here, so I'm hoping that it all works out. Well, he would be about 8 years younger than me. My brother, there's about an 8-year span between my brother and I, but we did not get along when we were kids very well. But we really get together now that we're both adults. Ugh, this kitty, I swear. Somebody has decided that my lap is the best spot for him to sit today. I set him up a chair and everything, but he has decided that lap time is now. No, don't go off, you little possum. You can wave at people and tell them hi. Say hi. All right, off to your chair, you. He heard me talking about him. Alrighty, so we will start with the start of the season in Kashmir, which is what the story is called. I mean, he does teach blacksmithing. It could have been him. He looks a little older than he is for some reason. Just, rough living, I reckon. Alrighty, so story number 1 is the start of the season in Kashmir, and I hope that you like it. Susan, I am out of North Florida, so yeah, I'm in that state. I'm not super happy about it, but it is what it is. Home is home. And as we always start out, we got to start with our sponsorship from Duke Cannon's brand lip balm, which I put on before I narrate every time. Duke Cannon, send me some money. Anyway, the start of the season in Kashmir. John Marvolo smiled as he looked at the announcement that had just come across his desk. Folks, it is my very great honor to announce that the city of Kashmir will be setting up its Halloween decorations this year. You can expect to see the usual pumpkins and scarecrows, and even a ghost or two as you go about your daily lives. Long-time residents will know that this means... know what this means. Try that one again. I mean, it's okay. I live on a farm, so it's pretty nice. Long-time residents will know what this means, but for you newcomers, I'd like to officially welcome you to your first Halloween in Kashmir. You can expect all sorts of activities from now till the 31st. There will be concerts in the bandstand, carnivals at any of the 5 churches in the area, and, of course, most businesses will be handing out candy on Halloween night. Another piece of paper rattled through the slot in his door, and he picked it up and chuckled as he read it over. Not to be outdone by the town, it would seem, the Kashmere Botanical Gardens will be holding their yearly Halloween event. Come see what they've planned this year and be ready for a ghoulish presentation. I've been told that the park has been creating its own line of beverages that has put several... Try that one again. Old McDr. Plague, absolutely. Ooh, that's a big snake. I don't much care for that. Let's see. I've been told that the park has been creating its own line of beverages and has put together several menus for those interested in trying their new wares. We can also rely on the hard-working men and women of the park to put together a display worthy of the town and its people. The park and its representatives invite everyone to come and experience a Kashmere Gardens Halloween. And remember that locals get a 15% discount when they show their ID. That's gonna take us back to the music, and I hope we'll see each other again after this interlude. John muted his mic and put on Dream Girl as he sat back in his swivel chair. He loved Halloween. The costumes, the candy, the little kids running around who seemed to be having such a gosh darn good time. He loved it all. He'd have to be sure to rig up his mobile setup so he could go out into the community and experience some of the yearly festivities again. He was sure that Charlie Guthrie would be performing in the park again this year, and he couldn't wait to have a piece of Mrs. Spencer's. Yeah. If I could talk. Have a piece of Mrs. Spencer's warm apple pie. It was going to be a good Halloween, as all Halloweens were in Kashmere, and John couldn't wait to tell everyone all about it. I think this is one of my favorite seasons to live in Kashmere. Dr. Winters smiled as she watched Juliet hang up the decorations in her clinic. She was never sure when was too early to start decorating, but the second week of October seemed to be when they always put up their offering to the season. Juliet would have put them up in August if Dr. Winters had let her. She had to be a little bit careful how early she put their decorations up in a place like this. Sometimes the sight of skeletons and bats hanging from the rafters set off people's less fun childhood memories, and she was sure that there would be a few people who would feel triggered in the waiting room until they took them down on the 31st. Dr. Winters was of the same mind as Juliet, however. She loved Halloween, and she would have gladly celebrated it every day if she could. If you guys are just joining us, this is our first Kashmere Halloween story, so pull up a chair. It should be pretty good. I'm right there with you, Susan. I'm not a big fan of snakes. I'm sure they are. I would gladly run away from them, Blondie. I really do not. I don't want to kill them. Like they do a lot of good things too. But like, I really just don't want to get bit by a timber rattler. That doesn't sound so great. Let's see. Where were we? Any plans this year? Pamela asked, as she handed her assistant a string of paper bats to attach to the ceiling. Well, I was going to hand out candy until about 7:30, get the little kids that walk up Main Street before I packed it in, and then I thought that maybe Mr. Jones and I might go to the botanical garden and see what they put together this year for Halloween. Dr. Winters smiled, keeping most of the wrinkled nose out of her voice as she told Juliet that that sounded lovely. Juliet had really taken to the young man who worked for her brother, this magnificent Lucifer Jones. He seemed like a nice enough boy, very polite, very charming any time he came to pick her up for lunch, but there was just something about him that Dr. Winters didn't particularly like. She was certain it was his association with her ne'er-do-well brother, but perhaps it was a little bit of possessiveness for her assistant and friend Juliet. Juliet had been with her for a very long time, someone she had helped out of a bad situation, and she really hoped that the young man wasn't the sort that would break her heart and then go about his business. Juliet deserved better than that. What about you, Doc? What are your plans for Halloween this year? The usual. I thought that Maggie and I might go to the park and hear Charlie Guthrie sing a bit, and then perhaps make our way to the botanical garden and see what all the fuss is about. Juliet grinned at her from the top of the stepladder. You can always go with Mr. Jones and I. Heck, ask Mr. Seraph if he'd like to come as well. He really is a nice guy once you get to know him. Despite her fondness for her brother's assistant, Juliet never seemed to be able to use his first name. It was always Mr. Jones, or sometimes, when she thought no one was listening, she would call him Marvelous, but she refused to use the name of that fallen angel in connection to someone she felt quite fond of. Dr. Winters often wondered what she would think of her if she realized that her boss had a similar nature to that morning star, whose name she didn't quite seem brave enough to utter. I don't think so. There's a lot of bad blood between my brother and I don't think we will ever be on good enough terms to be anything but passably sociable to each other. I'm old school, but that should be brother and I. Hey, Carol, we're glad you could make it. You're just in time. We're really just getting rolling. Juliet looked as if she wanted to say more, but went back to hanging Halloween decorations instead. Pamela knew that Juliet had guessed that there was something very heavy between the siblings, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. She probably assumed it was an inheritance squabble, or maybe a fight over land or a spat from childhood. In her world, there were things that separated siblings. She couldn't know of the betrayal her brother had been responsible for, or the betrayal her father had orchestrated, of her expulsion from the only place she had ever known into a place she had not only never been to, but had been raised to fear. The bell clinked, and Dr. Winters looked up to see the writer as he walked in, already chewing his fingernails. Pamela looked at him with a mixture of pity and almost motherly love. Juliet couldn't have guessed why she saw this one so often. If she had, her questions would have been endless. Who am I? And when he asked it, it was the tremulous voice of a child. Come on, I don't have any... I don't have any clients until 3. Let's see if we can't put your mind at ease once again. The two of them walked to the back, Dr. Winters with her arm around the man's shoulder, and Juliet watching them go with a sense of foreboding that seemed to be normal around that strange young man. If you're just joining us, we're on our first Kashmir Halloween story, so come and join us. Hey, Cindy. Thank you, Blondie. I appreciate that. Thoughts and prayers, Leia. Thoughts and prayers. Hopefully it's a good night on the trail. Okay. Gramps, you don't think this is too many tombstones, do you? Marcus and his grandfather had been decorating the house since mid-September. Marcus always laughed at his grandpa when it came to his two favorite holidays. Grandpa would have probably set up his Halloween decorations in July if he didn't think the neighbors would call him crazy. Neighbors? What neighbors? Marcus often asked himself. Grandpa's neighbors were about 3 miles up the road and into the woods. He supposed that wasn't true. There were other houses nearby, but they were all hidden in the woods like assassins just waiting to spring out. Come October 31st, the local kids would congregate in his yard for candy and stories and the usual atmosphere that Grandpa provided. This was Marcus's third Halloween living with his grandfather, and he had to say, it was one of the best years he'd ever had. He was engaged to the love of his life. His magic was growing daily, and for the first time, he actually felt like he might be making it. He had been sort of a do-nothing before his parents had gently forced him to go live with his grandfather, and it was one of the best things they had ever made him do. Marcus wholeheartedly believed that he would still be in his room playing Call of Duty and waiting for his savings to run out if he hadn't gone to live with the old... talk. If he hadn't gone to live with the old man who had changed his life so much. Don't be silly, Sonny. There's no such thing as too many tombstones. Grandpa laughed, but it was cut short when he began to cough, and he turned away from Marcus as the cough rattled out of him like acorns in a hollow tree. In a hollow tree. There we go. Marcus hated that cough. It had persisted for a year now, and no amount of steroids or warm weather seemed to be able to dispel it. As the temperature dropped and snow became more than just a threat, Marcus wondered if there would be another Halloween with his favorite grandpa. The thought made him tear up a little. He loved the old man, loved him more than he did either of his parents, in fact, and the passing of this old man would likely shatter him more than anything ever had in his life. He looked at the gravestones, those lumpy styrofoam... Blech. Is there a hair on my lip or something? Feels like there's a hair stuck to my lip. Okay. Try that one again. He looked at the gravestones, those lumpy styrofoam facades that they had painted gray and pushed into the ground with tent pegs. He hoped that he wouldn't need a real one before long, but he doubted his grandfather would want to be put in the ground anyway. Grandpa would want to be in the woods, a place he loved more than life itself, since he was old enough to stand on his 2 feet. Grandpa's coughing fit finally tapered out, and he headed to the front porch where there was a box of Halloween decorations he had bought from Habitat for Humanity. The lady behind the counter had saved it for him, knowing that Grandpa loved new decorations for his ever-growing display. Marcus had talked him out of buying a box of Christmas decorations that they had set aside for him, but the woman had winked at Grandpa and said that she would save them for him as long as she could. Marcus's shoulders already ached at the thought of pulling the Christmas decorations out of the attic and setting them up before the Thanksgiving turkey was even hot in the oven. Just a second. Goodness. Halloween and Christmas were the only two holidays that really mattered to his grandpa, and he was known throughout the hills and hollers for his displays and his offerings. "Let's get these bats up, son," Grandpa said, hauling at a string of plastic bats with little blinking lights in their heads. "More bats? You've got a squadron up already." "Yes, that is correct, Blondie." Grandpa smiled as he watched the lights wink on and off in their little plastic noggins. "A cauldron." Marcus got up on his tiptoes as he tried to look into the box, its position on the steps making it hard to tell what was inside. I mean, we're about the same, Carol, but I think we've got a few more Christmas decorations than that. But we go all out for Halloween. All right. That box looks a little small for a cauldron, but I guess anything is possible. No. A group of bats is called a cauldron, not a squadron. And anyway, I could never have too many bats. They're good for keeping bugs at bay. At bay. Yeah. Hey, good to see you, Winter. It's been a while. Marcus shrugged. It seemed that he just couldn't win with Grandpa. The old man was a wealth of information, some of it important, some of it just trivia. He ended up hanging the bats, putting up a few more scarecrows, and even assembling a Frankenstein's monster that Grandpa had gotten from God only knew where. He was careful to give the new bottle tree a very wide berth, however, and he went about as he went about setting up. Marcus thought he'd probably go for the rest of his life without interacting with another bottle tree, and it would still be far too soon. "I think we need more pumpkins on the front porch," Grandpa said, though he was now seated in his rocker on the front porch instead of straw bossing in the yard. There was a beer in his hand, and there was another one sitting on the table beside him. The invitation was pretty clear, and Marcus had worked up enough of a... Where were we? And Marcus had worked up enough of a sweat that something cool would be just what the doctor ordered. Marcus took a step forward, meaning to crack it open and have a sip, but he sighed as he went to the cooler and grabbed 2 bottles of water instead. "You need to stay hydrated, Gramps. You know your doctor says that's the only way you're going to get rid of that cough." "What cough?" Grandpa asked, but he ruined it by loosing a rattling cough, which he drowned with another sip of beer. Oh, that's just my hay fever acting up. It happens every year. No need to worry yourself or any doctor about it." Marcus nodded, but opened the water and put it down in front of Grandpa nonetheless. "Also, we carved all the pumpkins yesterday, unless you've managed to acquire some more." Grandpa grinned. Nope, that's not the line. Grandpa's grin was as big as one of the jack-o'-lanterns on the steps, as he pushed a few more from behind the chair he was sitting in. Marcus chuckled. "And just where did you get all of those from?" "An old man in the woods is allowed to have his secrets, son. Now, are you going to carve those pumpkins, or are you just going to jackjaw about it?" Marcus went inside to get a pair of carving knives. It appeared that the 12 or so pumpkins they had carved over the last 2 days just weren't going to be enough this year. At this rate, he might be done cleaning pumpkin guts out from under his fingernails by New Year's. Let me take a break here and see what we've got going on. Oh yeah, Carol, Halloween is our holiday as well. I feel that. I feel that one too. My cats usually do for my tree. Especially this little jerk. He likes to sleep in trees, don't you, Normal? Alrighty. Sheriff Guthrie hated Halloween. He had hated it ever since becoming a cop, but even when he was a kid, it hadn't really meant much to him. His mother had been one of those overly religious types, the kind that would no more have let her son go trick-or-treating than she would have let him take communion at a Catholic mass. They were Baptists, and some of his uncles had been known to speak in tongues as they held snakes. One of his cousins had died that way. Another one had lost an arm to a particularly nasty rattler after it bit him just below the wrist. His uncle had only said that both boys clearly did not have the Holy Spirit within them, and both of them no longer lived with their parents. One because he had decided to go to college 5 states away, and the other because his living days were at an end. "I'm sure he's more comfortable in the ground anyway." Sheriff Guthrie closed his eyes, gritted his teeth, and repeated the old catechism he had spoken for nearly 2 years. "Not there, not there, you are not there. Say what you like, kiddo, but I'm just as real as you are." Sometimes he would go a whole week without hearing the voice of his undead mentor. Sheriff Masterson had been a fairly amicable man in life, but death had stolen almost all of the humor from him. He clung to Sheriff Guthrie like smog around the top of a skyscraper, and some days the sheriff, temporary Sheriff Guthrie, would have liked to scrape him off and leave him elsewhere. Halloween was the worst because the closer it got to the 31st, the louder the old man became. He was leaning against the wall outside the sheriff's office, smoking a cigar and watching the kids as they left school and went off to whatever helling they had in store. Most of them were good kids. He had met a lot of them when the school brought him in to talk about drugs and booze and parents that liked hitting their kids more than hugging. But you could always count on a few of them being eager to egg a house or throw toilet paper in a tree. It was just the time of year. That was what the deputies under him would say. But Guthrie didn't care for the tricks any more than he did the treats. "Maybe if you'd get that cavity fixed in your back molar, you wouldn't be such a sourpuss." "Not there, not there, you are not there," Guthrie growled. Guthrie growled against his teeth. "I've always told you to get rid of me." "I've already told you how to get rid of me. I don't know why you're dragging your heels. You were always such a gung-ho deputy, but it feels like you need a boot in the ass to get started on this one." Sheriff Guthrie gritted his teeth as he tried to make the ghost shut up and leave him alone. He wanted desperately to go back to normal, or as close as he could get. He wanted a time when he didn't have this rotting corpse on his shoulder, when he could go a whole day without having to think about what had happened in the woods and how it was apparently all his fault. He felt his hands clench the symbol in his pocket, the one he had taken from the sheriff as he lay dying, so that he could make it out of the woods alive. Was it his fault? Had he been responsible for Sheriff Masterson's death? He didn't think so. No more than the beast that had killed him and intended to murder him, but the more that grinning specter whispered in his ear, the more he came to believe that he might be the problem. "You know what you have to do. You just have to decide what's more important. your job or the security of the town. Because if those things in the woods get antsy, and you know they sometimes do, then they're going to come into this town and they're going to wreak havoc. Not there, not there. You are... Sheriff Guthrie, are you feeling okay? Wait. Hold the phone. There was a rose red book? Oh, you mean Diary of Ellen Rimbauer. Never mind. I did like the show. The show was one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations. Oh yeah, that was a good one. Like it's one of the better King adaptations, honestly. Let me get back to reading, or we're never gonna get done here. Sheriff Guthrie opened his eyes, and there were suddenly two people standing a healthy distance from him, and looking on with concern. One of them was the new woman in town, the one who had opened the knick-knack shop that her aunt used to own. He thought her name might be Cassandra, but it was probably something else. Then he fixed on it. Her name was Candace, and she was standing there with Earl, the gravekeeper, who sometimes gave him so many headaches. He smiled at him, and it must have looked grisly because he saw Earl grip her arm a little tighter. Were these two dating? Guthrie was happy for them if they were, but he supposed he must look ghastly indeed for Earl to put a protective hand on her like that. Yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. What are you two up to tonight? Out on a date? Earl blushed, about as red as the town fire engine. Just off to have a little dinner at Miss Blair's. Everything going okay? I decided not to put up the Halloween decorations this year, like you asked me to last year. I figured the old graveyard was more than enough without me helping it along. Hang on. That sentence doesn't make any sense. I figured the old there's a word missing there. Yes, the new Institute show is supposed to be really good too. I need to get around to watching it. I figured the old graveyard was more than creepy enough without me helping it along. Guthrie took his hand off the symbol in his pocket and took out his lighter instead, lighting the end of his cigar before inhaling. I appreciate that, Earl. This time of year always puts me on edge. You two enjoy yourself. Hopefully the meal is just what you wanted. The two of them walked off, arm in arm, and Guthrie smiled at their backs. Let's hope they don't get mauled to death on an evening stroll after such a heavy meal, whispered the old ghost on his shoulder. Guthrie sighed. It was going to be a very long October. Alright, that is part one. As you can see, some of these are a little bit longer. Oh man, Needful Things was so good. I liked Needful Things. Maximum Overdrive's good. It's not one of my favorites, but it's good. And of course I like Carrie. I think my favorite is usually The Shining. I like it and Dr. Sleep. I mean, my favorite is The Dark Tower, but there's like 8 books there. Alrighty. We will move on to the next one, which is going to be a story from Kashmir Medical Center called Little Ghost. And it definitely is a fine Halloween story. I think you guys will like it. It was another typical night at the hospital, which is to say, I was plagued with ghosts. Carl had asked me for a favor, and given that I wanted to stretch my legs a little, I agreed before I had really thought about it. I need you to go down to admin and leave a copy of my schedule in the box. I was supposed to do it earlier, and my administrator is going to chap my hide if he comes in tomorrow and it's not done. Okay, but why don't you go down and do it? Carl shuddered visibly. No way. That place gives me the willies. I don't figure it would be a problem for you. You're friends with all the spooks around here, so should be just another cakewalk for you. I frowned as I took the paper, thinking he might be taking advantage of my gifts just a little bit. Still, it would take me at least 30 minutes to walk to admin and back again, and Carl promised that when I came back, he would let me go for another 30 minutes. It was hard to argue with a deal like that, so I set out for the very empty, very dark, and very creepy administrative wing. I like Dreamcatcher 2, Winter. It's a good book, and it was a good film. The film was a little over the top, but I liked it. It was alright. I feel that, Carol. I feel that. Blondie, if you haven't read Dreamcatcher, you absolutely should. The administration wing is in the back part of the old building. I don't have a key to it, but Carl had been nice enough to give me his set. Something he could have gotten in trouble for if they'd found out. I didn't think they would. Most of them knew we passed the keys around like party favors, and the chances of anybody checking cameras was slim to nil. Slim to nil. Given that admin left at about 5:30 every day, the hallway on this end was dark. Not pitch black, but it would have been had it not been for the emergency lights. Sorry, guys. The emergency lights were giving it their all, but their all wasn't really much. The Halloween decorations looked at me hungrily, and I couldn't really say that I liked the look of them much. It was pretty spooky down here, and I could understand why Carl hadn't really wanted to come down on his own. It was easy to imagine any number of boogans lurking in the corners, but I didn't have time to be afraid if I wanted that extra break. Instead, I just kept going, tried not to notice the eyes of the paper pumpkins as they followed me. I also tried to ignore the way it felt like something was watching me. I know what most of you will say. You'll say I was letting my imagination get the better of me. You'd be right, but it seemed to be a little more than that. I imagined I could see things following me from the doorways of the closed administration offices. The emergency lights seemed to glimmer off eyes the way they would if you see a dog or a fox by the lights of the high beams. Almost certainly. That's not a complete sentence. I was almost certain that I could see something ducking into the doorway, except it would be gone whenever I looked. It was pretty creepy, but I could see that the box I would need to put the admin schedule in at the end was at the... If I could talk today. It was pretty creepy, but I could see that the box I needed to put the schedule in was at the end of the hallway. I was nearly home free, so the idea of stopping wasn't really something that occurred to me. When I heard the small Twitter, Should have went over this one a little closer. When I heard the small titter of laughter as it echoed from one of the open offices, I started thinking that it might not all be in my head. That was when the weirdness really ramped up. I could hear the scuff of feet on the linoleum. I would see shadows as they fell across the door frames. And if I looked really close, I could see hollow eyes looking back at me. I told myself again and again that I was just being paranoid or jumping at shadows. But the further I went, the harder it got to tell myself that. I squinted into the darkness, and it was almost like I could see masked things lurking there. At first, I thought there might only be a couple, one or two, but the further I went, the more I began to see. Then it was 3, then 4, then 6, and finally there could be as many as 15 of them. They just kept peeking around at me like Jawas in a Star Wars movie. And that box I was supposed to put the schedule in felt like it might be miles away. I turned in the direction of the laughter as it came again, but there was still nothing but the giggles to show me that anything had been there. My hands were shaking as I stuck the schedule in the box, and as I turned around to look back up the hallway, it seemed to go on for miles. It was hard to notice that all the doors, hard not to notice. I missed a word there. It was hard not to notice that all the office doors were open. I could almost see the little faces peeking out of the doorways at me. It felt like I was about to run. Run with the bulls. It felt like I was about to run with the bulls, and as I took my first step into the shadowy... Sorry, guys. God, I cannot talk tonight. I'm having some real difficulties here. And as I took my first step into the shadowy admin hallway, all the doors suddenly slammed shut all at once. That was enough to make me jump, high enough to change out ceiling tiles, and I took off running at a sprint. As I passed the doors, they opened again, and I could see small creatures stepping out like kids with ghoulish faces. They were running behind me, but I was really sprinting now. I could make it to the door, but that would lead back out to the hospital proper. The lights were on out there, and I still believe that all I would have to do was get under those overhead lights, and the little ghost would have to go away. I was really booking it, peeking over my shoulder to see if they were following me, and the sight of that horde coming up behind me made me careless. I turned around just in time to slam waist first into a desk, groaning as I rolled onto the floor. Suddenly, I was looking up into the faces of those little ghosts. They were like monsters from a Halloween catalog in the 30s. Their faces were grotesque and lumpy, but the longer I looked, the more I realized the features were drawn on, not grown there. They were goblins, animals, all sorts of things. And as I shook in silent fear, they suddenly started giggling. That took me a little aback. Why were they laughing? "Happy Halloween!" they all yelled. And suddenly they were taking off their homemade masks and grinning at me. I was in shock. It was just a group of kids. Not just kids, though. They were also ghosts. Many of them were in hospital gowns, their faces covered in burns or their eyes blackened from sickness. But they were grinning like it was the most fun they had had in a long time. "Hey, Brandy, we're glad you could make it." "Oh, Misbehave, hey, we're glad you could make it too." I don't think... Hattie, not Harry. There we go. As Hattie's face swam over my own, I realized she must have organized this little ghoul squad, and I couldn't help but smile too. "Hattie, I should have known," I said as I got to my feet. "We got you good," Hattie said, practically bouncing with exuberance. "You sure did. Scared me half to death." The other kids were laughing and jumping as well, and I told Hattie to be careful who she tried that little trick on. Well, we've only really pulled it on you and the security guard, so I had to laugh at that. That explained why Carl hadn't wanted to come down here. They followed me to the entrance of admin, all of them wishing me a happy Halloween again, before I waved and headed back to my post. Some of the ghosts in the hospital were a real pain in the ass, but some of them really weren't so bad. I would certainly... It, not I. It would certainly be a lot duller around here after Hattie decided to move on. There you go. That's that one. Hang on, I gotta do a little changing here. Oh yeah, it's all Kashmir for the next 2 weeks. Like, we are doing some Kashmir stories for sure. Okay. And now we will be going on to our next story called The State of Halloween, which is another Kashmir story. And it'll be involving some of the preparation at the garden and some other things that we've got going on. So that should be cool. Give me just a second. Ugh. Got quite a crowd tonight. Okay, the start of Halloween. El DeGusto, you do what you gotta do, man. I've been told these stories are good to snooze to. Alrighty, the start of Halloween. Here we go. How are the festivities proceeding? They were all seated around the big table again. Sam and Randy, the lady, Tobias, August, and the Barker. The Barker sat at the other end of the table, as far from the lady as possible, but not out of any desire for distance. The distrust for the Barker had not lessened in the least bit, but some of them were beginning to come around. Tobias and August were still extremely paranoid about his presence, but some of the Brandylow in the park had begun to accept him. Just a little bit. Brandylow were jolly creatures by nature, and it was hard for them to hold a grudge for very long. mm. Okay. Some of them, the grizzled ones who had gone out to help find the lady and fought beside Randy, had helped him with his haunted house, but most of them still looked at him with distrust. "Randy, what is the status of our security?" "Security has stepped up. I have confiscated most of the automatic weapons from our new guests and given them the standard security truncheon and flashlight. I've explained to them that their weapons can be acquired again if they need them, but civilians don't take kindly to people with ARs patrolling the park. I do not foresee any sort of security issues with the upcoming event. Most of these guys have served in one military or another, and they know how to take orders." "Excellent. Tobias, how was the setup for the agricultural area proceeding?" The lady usually oversaw both areas of the park when it came to the events, but this year she had been talked into letting Tobias handle the agricultural area while she handled the more fantastic side of things. Her side had a spooky witch's house, Try that again. "Hey, Kathy, glad you could make it." Life does indeed happen. A candy forest, and some grisly-looking candy corn creatures who would chase guests if they got too close. There were costumed brandy-low in the haunted woods to scare people. There would be witch's brew served and finger foods made to look like body parts. It would be fun and spooky, and the lady had talked endlessly to Sam about her plans for Christmas as well. It goes well. We have set up the corn maze, put up some scarecrows. The Gordlings are coming along very nicely, and we have hay rides that will run every 30 minutes around the cornfield. There will also be pumpkin carving contests, which led to an odd noise from the Gordling that was sitting in the lady's lap. Scarecrow stuffing contests, and even a spooky barn that will be fine for kids of all ages. Yeah, a lot of people don't, Brandy. It really seems like YouTube has kind of forgotten about me. Honestly, if you guys are missing the announcements for if you guys are missing the announcements for the live, I'd say get on the Discord. Like, before I go live, I usually put out a message on Discord letting people know. And Discord's a little bit more punctual with their reminders. No worries. That's okay, Leia. Understandable. We're just glad you're here. Oh. The lady looked pleased, but the two sides might as well have been warring nations as far as Sam was concerned. The sticking point always seemed to come back to the Barker. The Barker had set up his haunted house on the edge of the candy forest, and though it was small, he assured everyone that it would be something to be experienced. It was supposed to be at the back corner of the agricultural area, but Tobias had put his foot down and said he wanted the man nowhere near his side of things. He is untrustworthy, and I refuse to turn a blind eye and let him stab us in the back again, Tobias said to Sam when he went to talk to him. Tobias, be reasonable. The lady trusts him, and that's all we need concern ourselves with. You told me once that my own feelings on something didn't matter as long as the lady was safe and her orders were followed. Then my own misgivings needn't get in the way. Tobias turned and glowered at him, not liking having his own words thrown back in his face. Yes, but you never endangered the safety of the park. More importantly, you never endangered the safety of our mistress. He helped them kidnap her. They tortured her in an attempt to get her to give up her power. And if you hadn't come to get her, then they would have killed her before letting her come back to us. Or worse, they would have trapped her away, and we would have never seen her again. Or not for a god-awful long time. I know this whole Brandylow thing is new to you, but I've been doing it for several hundred years. I'm in no hurry to return to the time when I lived in uncertainty that was my lady's absence. Trust me when I say that you wouldn't want to either. Oh. There we go. That was when they decided that they'd put the haunted house closer to the entrance and keep him well away from Tobias. August, how goes the concession stand? August began to prattle on about the new food at the concession and how everything would be ready on time, and about the new offerings they had for homemade beverages. But Sam found that he couldn't take his eyes off Tobias. Tobias was staring daggers at the barger, who seemed to be doing his best to ignore him. Some of the Brandylow didn't trust him, but Tobias seemed to hate the man. The look he was giving the suited gentleman was like something worn by a slighted and jaded lover. Sam hoped that he would get over it. He was suddenly very aware that it would never happen. Sam had felt for a while that something was brewing, and he hoped it wouldn't disturb the general peacefulness of the park. If you guys are joining us, this is our third Holiday Cashmere story, so, settle in. Hash brownies. Oh, that sounds nice. Who's got some of those? Excellent. It sounds as if everything is going well. We will officially begin the event on Monday. All of you should be ready to unveil your displays by then, so take the rest of the day to make sure everything is in order. Randy, make sure the security team is briefed on how to deal with guests. We don't want another incident like the one we had a week ago. Randy turned a little red, but Sam could commiserate. It hadn't really been the security team's fault. The man had been drunk and belligerent, and they had really just been doing their job. The man had had a little bit too much to drink at one of the concession stands, the workers not understanding the wisdom of cutting him off before he got too drunk, and he had wandered into one of the displays to touch the plants. Excuse me. Welcome, lurkers. We appreciate you. He'd thrown up in some of the flowers and trampled over a lot of the ladies' work, and when the security team had come to get him, he had tried to fight them. The Brandylow he was fighting had likely put off men twice his size, and when one of them had wrenched his arm behind his back, it had dislocated. The man had started screaming, but the security team had escorted him to the gate and pushed him out onto the sidewalk, telling him he was banned from returning. Banned. Hang on. Telling him he was banned from the park and refusing to let him re-enter. Some of the other guests had called him an ambulance as the man lay there on the sidewalk, and it was a wonder that they hadn't been sued yet. Maybe he had sobered up and thought better of it, but Sam doubted it. That will conclude today's meeting. Everyone be ready for the unveiling on Monday. You're all dismissed. All of them got up, but the lady put a hand over Sam's hand, and he stayed as everyone else shuffled out. Have you heard anything from the court?" Sam shook his head. "Not since we came back. The fairies move at their own speed, you know better than anyone, and it seems that both courts are keeping us out of whatever business they have going on, if they have business going on at all." The lady sighed. "The courts always have business going on. We will need to be on our toes if they mean to start trouble. The last thing we need is to involve a bunch of mortals in fae drama. Keep your ear to the ground and let me know if you hear anything." Sam bowed and took his leave. He would need to move around amongst the others and make sure their efforts were in order. This would be the first event of the season, and he wanted everything to go off without a hitch. Meow. Noisy cuss. The warden moved through the prison like a wraith. The dorms were now staffed by the dead. The other shifts had left as well, in the end, and many of them hadn't even bothered coming in. It had been a hard couple of weeks, meeting with the various representatives. Meeting with the various representatives of the shifts and fielding questions from captains and officers alike. They had tried to reason with him, but there really weren't enough of them to make an adequate argument. The truth was that the prison was at an all-time low when it came to staff, and the ghosts were the only way they were going to make it to 2026. Strauss could say what he wanted. He hadn't even bothered to come to the talks, but the facts were the facts. They had asked for more pay, maybe for the National Guard to come in and help with the shortage, but mostly what they wanted was the new hires to be gone. "It's macabre," Captain Jennings had said over his crossed arms. Jennings had been there for about a decade, and he was the most stable captain Stagview had. That's why he was on days. That's why he had the most employees. That's why he worked the most overtime. Stagview had been his refuge after his wife had died, and he was fond of taking up the slack left by Captain Trippus, the other day shift captain. "Macabre?" the warden had said with a smirk. "What's so macabre about getting work done? Our numbers have been low since before you started, Jennings, and they've only decreased since then. This is progress, Captain. You can either be part of that progress, or you can leave." Jennings hadn't liked that. "If we had a PBA, I'd have already notified the representatives. But we don't," the warden cut him off. "We have never had a union for the same reason I don't bring the National Guard into this. This is my prison, gentlemen, and it will stay my prison." Hang on just a second. Let's see who is texting me here. If my phone will do stuff, that would be great. Two shakes, guys. Okay. Hey, Yuri, we're glad you could make it. Laszlo, welcome. Nordic born. The squeegee bit. I do not. Oh, goodness. We have a lot of new faces. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Come in. Oh, thank you, Dead Fool. Thank you. My goodness, we do have a lot of new faces. Maybe some of our daytime guys. Oh, hey, I'm just glad for the numbers. Thanks, guys. Welcome, welcome. All right, where were we? Halfway through a Stragview story, I think. Jennings had brought about 10 other officers with him, sergeants and lieutenants, and regular grunts, too, and none of them seemed pleased with that answer. They had assigned Jennings as their spokesperson because he had seniority, but it was starting to look like that wasn't going to get them much. It won't be for long. That's not the voice there. It won't be for long if your staff leaves, Jennings pointed out. You have about 150 people on staff, and that's admin and certified staff and all of them are prepared to walk out. We've been talking to them too, and no one is willing to stay if the Ghoul Squad still works here. That's what they were calling them, the Ghoul Squad, and the name seemed fitting. They didn't talk much, this army of the dead, and they did what they were told, and that's what he needed them to do. They didn't bicker about time off or overtime. They didn't complain about double shifts or staying over. And they didn't even need a break to smoke or go to their car. They worked sun up to sun down, and they worked well. My goodness. Well, welcome, everyone. Nah, that's cool. The cat, he's over there. 17. I checked, Hal. Oh. Alright, where were we? The warden only shrugged. At the end of the day, Jennings, the paperwork often takes care of itself. The inmates and their continued incarcerations are what's always been important. You never understood that, or maybe you did, who knows. Either way, so long as they stay in here and keep getting fed, the state keeps sending me money, and that means that this place will continue. As for you lot, I would imagine you should start looking for work. It's almost the end of the month, and bills still need to get paid. The COs hadn't been happy at the end of the meeting, but as he walked the grounds of Stragview, it was hard to see this as anything but a victory. The dorms were managed, the inmates were alive, and order still reigned. There were some cracks, sure, but there always were. The inmates had made no bones about the fact that they hated the new squad. Sir, this ain't right. You got ghosts watching us now. What kind of fucked up shit is that? They don't respond to our needs, they don't show us any care, and they can't be swayed by... Bleh. Tried to move too quick into that one. There you go, Blondie. They can't be swayed to bring in your contraband. They can't be moved by emotional appeals. And they can't be threatened with violence because they're already dead. Is that what you mean? The inmate in question, another representative of a very different committee, hadn't said anything in response to that. There would be some kind of riot soon, the warden had no doubt of that, but what of it? They would find the undead very resistant to the fight put up by the flesh and blood COs. Hang on. That's gotta be different. Blondie, everybody. The best admin I ever had. Yeah, it happens sometimes, though. My goodness. There were a lot of them, though. Undead, very different. There we go. They would find that the undead put up very different resistance than the COs they were used to. Still, the warden said, as evening fell, and he looked up at the stars as they twinkled above him, it gets lonely with no one to talk to. So I'm not really sure what happened there, but apparently we got mobbed by somebody else's live stream. You'll love to see it. I mean, shoot, I'll take their money. I mean, I'm not too good to accept some donations, but goodness, you hate to see it, but numbers is numbers, I suppose. Sheriff Guthrie sipped as he sat in his squad car. He had taken a double tonight, wanting to be out of the house, but it had been a pretty slow night, all told. He had watched some passers-by, yelled at a couple of kids who were riding their mini-bikes up Main Street, and flashed his lights at a couple of teenagers who were necking in the alcove of a storefront. All in all, it was a slow night for the season. He'd seen Earl and the new girl, Candace, walk by earlier, and that made him smile. They'd been hand in hand as they headed back to her place, and Guthrie wondered what they were up to now. "Filthy-minded fool," growled a voice from behind him, and Guthrie growled in indignation. "How much longer are you going to hang around? How much longer are you going to procrastinate?" Guthrie sipped his coffee and tried to ignore the old spook. It was going to be a long October. There you go. That's the third story for the night, and we're probably going to roll straight into story number 4. Hope you guys are enjoying the lineup. Some of you may have guessed, our story takes place before some of the stuff we've got going on with Earl and Candace, but we're about to pick that up again. So some of you guys who've been listening will remember that Candace admitted to Earl that she was a werewolf, and now Earl is basically about to tell her what's going on with him. So we will move into that, and that will take us into story number 4 for the night. Okay, okay. Oh yeah, the numbers are great. I love that part. Leia's working on her shoe collection over there. Okay, so we're going to move on to story number 4, which is Love in Kashmir. And it's going to pick up our story with Earl and Candace as they explore their budding relationship. Earl felt nervous, sitting in her pristine studio apartment as she made tea. For an antique collector, her taste in furniture was very plain. Most of her apartment appeared to have been furnished from Walmart or the thrift store, and he supposed that if you worked with old things all day, you probably didn't want to come home to them. The one exception seemed to be the big stone fireplace in the living room, something that had likely come with the house. Earl thought it would probably be fun to roast marshmallows in front of, or to sit there and hold hands and watch a movie, especially as the weather got colder. As nice as the idea was, it was hard to think about anything, as his mind tried to come to terms with what was about to happen. Earl's grandmother had always told him that people wouldn't understand, and that many of them would be afraid if they knew. Earl was nervous, but he knew it had to be done. If he knew... Try that one again. If he knew how much his feelings had been mirrored by hers not even half an hour before, he might not have felt so trepidatious over it. She came back with tea, and as she laid out the cups between them, Earl tried to figure out how to begin. So, I've struggled with this since I was a little kid. It's not something I tell people because my grandmother always told me that people wouldn't understand. She said if they knew, they would treat me differently, so I always kept it to myself. It helps with the job, I suppose, and it's been kind of a blessing, all things considered. Makes me afraid sometimes, but I guess the pluses outweigh the minuses when you come right down to it. Candace spooned sugar into her tea, pursing her lips as she looked down into the liquid. You can tell me, Earl. I won't judge you. After all, you know my secret, and you didn't even bat an eye at it. Earl took a deep breath and finally just came out and said it. Candace, I can see ghosts. When she laughed, Earl felt a little self-conscious, like the little boy from The Sixth Sense, the whole I can see dead people thing. Earl laughed too, understanding that she wasn't laughing at him. Believe it or not, I've never seen that movie. Anytime anybody starts talking about seeing dead people, that's the movie that everybody talks about, though. Candace took a seat beside him on the couch, looking at him with interest as she blew on her tea. So, how does it work? Do you see them, or can you talk to them? Talk to them, interact with them, everything, I suppose. I have a friendship with just about every spirit in the graveyard, and they like having someone that can talk to them while they're still going through their transition into being dead. Do they... She wrinkled her nose as if trying to decide how to ask. Do they always stay at the graveyard? I mean, do any of them move on? Yeah, sometimes. Not all of them move on, but not all of them stay either. For some reason, only about 1 in every 5 people makes a ghost. Sometimes it's unresolved conflicts. Sometimes it's just a lack of anything else to do. It's not all atheists either. Some of them just aren't ready to move on to whatever comes next. They talk about heaven or hell or purgatory. Heck, I've even got a funny guy in the back corner that thinks he's going to Valhalla any day now, but they go in their own time. I don't think it's anything they've done. I think it's just accepting that they're not alive anymore. I'm sure there's something else out there. It's hard for them to find it. Candace thought that over for a moment, sipping her tea and thinking. I hate to ask, but my aunt is buried in Whispering Pines Cemetery. Has she moved on? Or is she still there? Earl smiled. Your aunt was never a spirit in my cemetery. I heard she went quick. I remember the service. It was beautiful, but once she was in the ground, she never made a ghost. Like I said, some of them don't. That seemed to make Candace feel a little better. So, you can talk to the ghosts, and I'm a werewolf. I guess weirdos really do attract. She seemed to regret it after she said it, but Earl just laughed. At least they do in Kashmir. I'll admit I've never actually had anybody to talk with about it except my grandma. She died when I was still in high school, and I was glad to see that she moved on right away. She'd spent her whole life seeing ghosts, so I assumed she probably didn't want to spend her time being one. The two of them sat in a very loaded silence for a few minutes, sipping their tea and probably wondering what the other was thinking. Candace was wondering if Earl was freaked out that she was a werewolf. A werewolf? I can't talk today. Candace. There we go. Candace was wondering if Earl was freaked out that she was a werewolf. Earl was wondering if Candace would want him to talk to dead people now. They both started to speak at the same time, laughing as they told the other to go first, laughed again, both of them so awkward at what probably looked like a normal early relationship problem to most people. Sometimes you get in a relationship and she has cats and you're allergic. Sometimes you get into a relationship and he has strange hobbies that you don't have an interest in. They both supposed that the same could be said for someone who's a werewolf and someone who can speak to the dead. That's bad, Osiris, but I like it. Earl may, you know what? Yeah, Osiris is right. Canonically now, Earl is a Pisces. I'm gonna put it in his bio. I think I skipped a part. Whatever the case, both of them were glad that they had found the other. I'd like to see you again, Earl. Is that okay? Earl grinned from ear to ear. I'd like to see you again, too. I was really hoping that the whole talking to dead people thing wouldn't run you off. Candace shook it. Blech. Candace shook her head. If you weren't freaked out by the whole dating a werewolf thing, then I suppose you talking to dead people is really nothing to get excited about. The two of them stared at each other for a moment, their eyes crinkling as they sat in silence. And when they both pushed forward into a very chaste kiss, it felt like fireworks exploding behind Earl's eyes. He had never stopped to think that he might be in this situation. The only woman he had ever loved had died before he was born, and it had seemed foolish to think that anyone would want a gravedigger as a husband. It seemed, however, that Candace had looked past all that. Perhaps working with discarded things had helped her see the value in someone who cares for the dead. I think I'd like to go have a bath and head to bed. It's been a wonderful night, Earl, but I think I need to get some sleep before I do something that might be a little out of character for me. Could I see you again? I would like that very much. Sure, whenever you like. Do you want to go to the town's Halloween carnival with me? I saw them setting it up a couple of days ago, and it should be open next week. Charlie Guthrie will be putting on a performance in the park, and if you've never heard him sing, then you're in for a treat. That sounds lovely. I can't wait. Okay. Will I see you tomorrow? Do you mean today? Candace asked with a laugh. Earl chuckled. I guess it pretty much is today already, isn't it? I'll come by for lunch if you're not too busy. That sounds great. I'd better get home too. Got a lot of work to do tomorrow, and it sounds like a pretty gal is coming over for lunch. They kissed again, that same slow, delicious pressing of lips, and then Earl got up and said his goodbyes. He bumped into a fella on the way in, but he barely noticed him on his way out the front door to the apartment complex, offering him a distracted "excuse me" as he made his way out into the night. He probably wouldn't have noticed the gun, but if he had, it might have saved a lot of trouble later on. The man in the large The man in the long coat and the tip-down fedora turned and looked at Earl as he decided to move. Try that again. The man in the long coat and the tip-down fedora turned to look after Earl, but decided to move on as he headed for home. He had hoped he wouldn't have to involve civilians. The paperwork would be hellish if he had to put a bullet in the town's groundskeeper. The black site didn't like collateral damage. All right, that's our fourth story, and we'll be moving on to our fifth story. I do hope you guys are enjoying the spooky lineup we've got for Kashmir Halloween this year. I know some of them are a little longer than others, but, I'm working with a narrative here, so trying to get everybody involved. There will definitely be some grandpa towards the end, too. I've actually got a Christmas special for Grandpa this year. I think it's going to be a 5-parter. I think it's going to be pretty good. I think it's overdue. We haven't really done a lot of Grandpa lately. Not since spring. And I think it's well overdue for us to get a little more Grandpa stories in. Well, we will have to wait for the next. I don't think it's going to be in the next story, but it's going to be in the one after that. So, yeah, I think we will get our conclusion before Halloween, though. Trust me on that. This one's called Changing of the Seasons, and it's going to be our last story for the night. So I hope you guys enjoy it. In fact, give me just a second. Let me go and check on my soup. I can smell it, and I want to make sure it's not boiling over. I'll be right back. 2 shakes. Alrighty, we are back. Man, I haven't thought about Dr. Demento in forever, Blondie. That's a blast from the past right there. But I can dig it. Let's see. Trying to see if we had anything particular here. Alrighty, so let's get this last one going here. I can't say much. I like older horror a lot too, so I tend to vibrate to it, and I'm almost 40 myself, so I'm getting there. All right, so changing of the seasons, and away we go. If I can get this into position, so I can see it properly. There we go. As you can see, everything is in order. The new root beer is coming along nicely. The teas are all set, and the kombucha should be sweet and seasonal. And none of it's illegal, right? Sam asked, raising an eyebrow. August rolled his eyes. Just because that's how we began doesn't mean that's how we proceed. Rest assured, that's not a mistake we'll make again. Sam nodded, burping a little as he stepped out from behind the counter of the concession stand. He'd been sampling some of their wares so that he could report back to the lady, and it had been quite a culinary adventure. Sam felt like he'd eaten a horse, and he was already sure his heartburn would make him pay for it later. Well, Sir Knight, I trust you will confer to our mistress and tell her how things are proceeding. You better believe it. It's all going to be a hit, I have no doubt. Sam believed it, too. Besides the root beer and the kombucha, they also had several seasonal pastries, spiced teas, soft pretzels, and all sorts of ciders to stave off the chill. There'd be no lack of people lining up to have a taste, and Sam could already see the dollar signs that would be rolling in this time next week. He was full as a tick, practically waddling away from the refreshment area, and he looked at his list as he sighed and realized he still had 2 more places to go. He had to check out the haunted house, and he had to go have a look at the corn maze. While he was in the agricultural area, he should probably look at the rest of it too, but the 2 big attractions there were the haunted barn and the corn maze, and he would need to report on both of them. He was coming through the candy forest, belching every other step as he alleviated some of the pressure, when he caught sight of the Barker, looking forlorn as he stood outside his attraction. It was less of a haunted house and more of a haunted shed, but the Barker had assured all of them that despite its size, it was something to be seen. How... Blech. Come on, you. What is going on with this thing today? I swear. There we go. Okay, well, that's weird. Just a pain in my butt today, I swear. Technical difficulties, give me just a second. See if we can't. There we go. Alright, that's a little better. Gotta get the sizing just right there. Okay. So, where were we? Now, however, the place looked to be fairly trashed. The door had been taken off its hinges, all of the decorations lay smashed and scattered in front of the small shack, and someone had spray-painted "Traitor" across the front in red spray paint. If he heard Sam coming, he gave no indication. He just stood there, looking as Sam came to stand next to him. "Well, you were right. It's certainly something to be seen. I don't understand why they keep doing this." "Who?" Sam asked, but he already knew. It would be the same group that had talked quietly any time he went past. "I didn't see them. They were gone by the time I got here, but I can venture a guess. It was Tobias, it was August, it was the members of the refreshment committee, or any of the dozens of others who do not seem to be able to trust me." Sam wanted to comfort the Barker, but on some level he understood why they were so upset with this creature. He had hurt them, or at least he had hurt the lady. They could not forgive that, and many of them never would. Tobias was beginning to look like one of those, and he would never let bygones be bygones. He would likely be at odds with the Barker until one of them was forced to leave, and the idea that the exiled one might be Tobias was beginning to become more and more likely. The lady was tired of these antics, and she was beginning to question whether putting Tobias out would fix some of the problems. "Lou, what's up, man? You missed all the festivities." We had a regular throng in here a minute ago. "Do you want some help cleaning up?" Sam asked. "No, there's very little to clean up. The edifice you see is a little beyond a portal." "The edifice you see is little beyond a portal." Vintage. Yep, we're on story number 5 right now. "What is inside cannot be tampered with, and all they can do is destroy the ambience that I have created for those who will wait their turn. I will have everything ready by tomorrow. Do not fret." Sam nodded, but as he walked away, he had already decided to fret plenty. He found himself charging over to the agricultural area, his armored boots clumping on the ground as he walked around a small horde of Gordlings that capered about in the farm area. Some of the Brandylow looked at him with concern, and it seemed that they knew why he was here. How many of them had participated in what he had witnessed outside the Barker shed? He didn't know, but he knew who would have the answers. He found Tobias near the cornfield, directing the walking pumpkins into something a little more orderly. "Ah, Sam, good timing. I need your help with—" But he stood up to find that Sam was far closer to him than he had expected. The two were practically nose to nose, and Sam did not look particularly pleased. "It's one thing if you want to hold a grudge, but do not involve the rest of them." The Barker not only apologized for his part in the abduction of the lady, but he also tries his best to find her and bring her back. "I do not ask you to love him. I believe that such things may be beyond you, but I ask that you not hinder him. Just let him be. It's all he wants." Ah, an interview, hopefully. Lou does good interviews. Tobias bristled. "How dare you come and levy accusations at me? I had no part in whatever has befallen this misbegotten thing." "Oh, I don't doubt that you did not participate yourself. I'm not accusing you of ruining his things. I'm asking you to not—" Bleh, if I could talk. I did make some chicken soup. It came out more chicken and rice. I had to add more water when I was just in there. What I'm asking you to do is to tell your people to leave him alone. Tobias's face was cloudy, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. There is a reckoning coming, Summer Night. I will not ask you to take a side. I know your only concern is the safety of the lady and the safety of the park, but what I ask is that you stand aside. He needs to be expelled, and if he will not leave on his own, then he will be put out. The sword was in Sam's hand as if by magic, but neither of them seemed to notice. Funny. That sounded like you were threatening a member of this park. You're correct. My prerogative is the protection of the lady and those who dwell under her protection, and he is one of those people. I will ask you once more, put aside this needless feud. If you do not, then I cannot guarantee that he will be the one to leave. The lady would never, Tobias blustered, but Sam cut him off. Oh, she would. You have disobeyed her orders, and she is growing tired of this agitation. Squash this, or I cannot promise that you will have a place here any longer. You're well respected, Tobias, and I know it would hurt you to be away from her. But I believe that if an example is made, then the rest will lose their heart for this nonsense. Do yourself a favor and let it go. Sam left then, finally aware of the sword and sending it back to its sheath with a quick thrust at his hip. Tobias watched him leave, and by the feel of the dark looks that threatened to penetrate his back, Sam knew there would be no letting this go. It was dark, and Dr. Winters was walking through the woods. She couldn't have said why she did this, not right on top, but this time of year she usually found herself strolling through the woods for no particular reason. It was an old habit from way before she could remember. It took her back to her early days in Kashmir, days that were a little foggy and more than a little scrambled. Maggie had been sitting in bed watching something on Netflix when she left. She asked Pamela if she wanted company, but Winter had shaken her head and told her that she would prefer a little bit of privacy. Maggie understood and had kissed her cheek and told her to be careful. Dr. Winters always smiled a little when she told her to be careful. Careful of what? Nothing could hurt her out here, and she damn well knew it. Why am I here? Who am I? She almost sounded like the writer who had come in earlier that day. She felt bad for the young man, though she supposed he wasn't very young at all. He had been here for a long time, one of her first patients, in fact, and she liked to keep tabs on him, despite how needy he could be sometimes. He was always looking for something, and Winter would have really liked to have helped him find it. She wanted to help, but she honestly didn't know what he was looking for. She didn't think anybody did. But she supposed that was part of the game, wasn't it? She helped as much as she could, and when she couldn't help anymore, she sent them to someone more qualified. But who was more qualified than her? There we go. As the trees pressed around her, Dr. Winter was once again reminded of her earliest days in Kashmir. The town had existed back then, but it had been different somehow. Not really different, but less populated, less there. She knew that didn't make much sense, but she didn't really understand herself. She remembered a time before coming to the town. She remembered a time after coming to the town, but there were holes in that memory that made it difficult to trust most of what she knew. She knew what she was. Her nature had never been a secret, but how was it that she had found herself so enthralled by this place? A stick snapped to her left, and she turned to see one of the forest denizens coming towards her. It bowed its head, and she reached out a hand to stroke it. They were hellhounds, because of course they were. They had come up through the hole in the woods, just as she had, and she had never really been sure why. Had they come through in her wake? She didn't know, and she suspected it didn't really matter much. They were here, and she supposed they weren't going anywhere. They caused the town some trouble from time to time, but they mostly seemed content to stay in the woods and bother no one. They'd been so agitated lately that she wondered what was happening in the forest around her brother's domain. It was none of her business. The two of them had always stayed out of each other's way. They came together on occasions to help one another or to thwart the plans of the other, but they rarely came into each other's territory simply because they could. Her other brother, the meddler, was the one she had to worry about coming into her place, but her older brother seemed content to stay in his prison. The hellhound moved away, clearly not particularly eager to stay in one place very long. Dr. Winters went deeper into the woods, not sure what she was looking for, but just enjoying the night air as she went. Ugh. Sheriff Guthrie was dozing in his cruiser when someone suddenly yelled for him to wake up. He jerked awake, startled out of sleep by the sudden noise, and the jerk caused him to spill coffee on his pants leg. He cursed and wiped at it as the old ghost in the back seat laughed like it was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. "That's what you get for napping on the job." Guthrie sighed, turning around as he looked at Sheriff Masterson with all the anger and pomp that he could muster, but the cold coffee soaking into his leg ruined the illusion somewhat. "Oh, God, Lou, I have no idea. I'd get sued. That's what would happen." It's interesting, though. It's interesting. "Seriously, what is it that you want?" "I already told you what I want. It's for you to put me to rest." "Yeah, you say that all the time, but you have yet to tell me how to accomplish it. I could be Sherlock fucking Holmes, and I'd still have no clue what it is you want. If you want to be put to rest so damn bad, then why not help me out and let me know what you're after?" He could see the old ghoul perched in the back of his cruiser, looking just as comfortable as he had in life. He was a little more rotten now, a little less put together, but he was still the same man. He had his hands folded in his lap, and he smiled as if a particularly slow student had finally understood some assignment. "The thing you saw in the woods on the night I died, the things that don't like that symbol you took off of me, that's what you're after. You have to figure out what it is that those things want. And if you don't, I'm afraid the music is never gonna stop. I'm only one person. I can't fight things like that." The old sheriff just looked at him doggedly. "Then you better turn in that badge and get out of town, because you are not the man for the job." Sheriff Guthrie started to ask him what any of that meant when dispatch sent a message over the wire for him. All units, shots fired at Elsmay Arms. Repeat, shots fired at Elsmay Arms. Sheriff Guthrie, do you copy?" Sheriff Guthrie grabbed up the handset. 10-4. I need the exact location," he said, putting the car in gear as he headed out with lights and sirens blazing. "Apartment 27. Neighbors called to report shots fired and the sound of a scuffle. The owner is Candace Sutherland." Sheriff Guthrie gritted his teeth. This night just kept getting better and better. He headed for the Elsmay Arms, praying that he wasn't about to arrest the town's gravekeeper for doing something extremely stupid, or the owner of Cashmere Sundries for putting him into an early grave. And that's all we've got for tonight, guys. I do hope you have enjoyed tonight's spooky presentation. And, of course, you can look forward to seeing these next week on the channel. We're going to, oh, sorry, my voice is going. We'll have another 5 stories next week to kind of wrap this up. And, of course, pull up more spooky stuff. So, be sure to join us next week for more spooky stories. And, there's going to be some special Halloween cozy horrors next week, so be sure not to miss those. And I'm going to leave you with that while I've still got some voice left. You guys have a good evening, and it's always great to spend time with you guys. Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.